All right, this is Upside Down in the Middle of Nowhere, chapter 29, 30, and 31. I didn't even hear the whistle wheeze, but when Mama spun around clutching Colleen to her chest with that look on her face, I knew that it could only mean one thing. Mama found us a tiny square of soggy ground and went to arranging us kids like we were lawn furniture. She hugged wide-eyed Celie and gave her a forced smile, and she wet her thumb with spit and wiped a corner of Kayla's mouth. She kissed her on the top of her frizzy head and laid down on the ground, and she went and balled right up like a scared roly-poly, as quick as a lick, and she was snuggled up as a kid can get lying in dirty grass. I should have been breaking into a panic because it was clear that something like a goodbye was coming, but instead I blinked a couple of times trying to keep my eyes from burning and sucked in gulps of air. Armani, Mama said, I'm going to find help for Colleen. But Mama, Celie whimpered from somewhere behind me, you all will be fine. Mama still hadn't looked me in the eye, and it won't be long. Kayla needs a rest, and I can't move fast without, and I won't, and Mama cleared her throat. I won't be long. She was talking fast. Please, Mama, Celie cried. Please let us come with you. Mama looked at me. Armani, I need to find help fast. If anything happens to this baby. And she squeezed her eyes shut and shook her head from side to side, biting into her bottom lip. I put an arm around Celie's shoulder, and right away she went to leaning into me, making it hard for me to keep my balance. I followed Mama's gaze, and when she opened her eyes and looked at all the craziness around us, her head dropped. Colleen's wheeze was loud and rumbly, and he was having a kind of attack that would have meant calling the ambulance if we'd been at home before the water came. Mama, I said, having a hard time breathing myself. Mama slowly brought her head up so I could see her face, and it was looking straight into the face of my sweet Mima. My poor Mama's face had gone from turned into an old lady's face, and I wanted to reach out and hold her, and I wanted to her to hold me too. The wheezing turned to a choking whimpers. I have to go, baby girl, she said, and a tear slid down her cheek. I know, Mama. Part of growing up meant not crying and fussing over every little thing, so I sniffed good and strong and let my blurry eyes settle on a smudge on the shoulder of Mama's dress. Armani, Mama said, reaching behind her neck to unhook the compass locket. I laid my hand on one of her arms and shook my head. It's all right, Mama. Keep it so you can find your way. And I tried to force a smile, and a tear found its way to the corner of my mouth. You can put it on me when y'all get back, and I kissed Colleen's pasty forehead, and the salt from his skin laid thick on my lips. Mama let go of the locket clasp and pulled me in close, and she squeezed me as tight as I'd ever done. I'll be right back, I promised, and she said the soft words straight into my ear, and a burning stabbed my heart when she said promise. She turned and took off, zigzagging fast through the people, and the crowd swallowed up Mama. Just like that, she was gone. This is chapter 30. There was no telling how much time had gone by since Mama left. It didn't matter one way or another, no how, because just 1 minute sitting there in the middle of nowhere was like 1 minute too long. The smell coming off the earth was rotten. It turned my nose so it was close to my shoulder and took a whiff, and a shudder went through me, and it smelled like the earth. Celie's head rested in my lap, and I stared out at the sight. I still couldn't believe what I was seeing. I locked eyes with a kid about my age who was sitting off in the madness by himself. He had had that look I'd seen earlier on Mama's face. That look of nothing, and I was fixing to turn away when I seen a girl familiar. Tay-Tay? A bolt of energy shot through me. Tay-Tay! I hollered, and I jumped to my feet. Celia's head hit the ground and her eyes popped open. The girl kept walking and walking like my cousin with that certain bounce that's all her. Tay-Tay, I hollered and waved my arms, and the girl stopped and looked around, but never in my direction, and a cry started building up in my belly, and the girl went to walk again. Is that Tay-Tay? Celia asked. I think so. My heart was racing and my head was pounding. Tay-Tay. Me and Celia hollered at the same time. The girl disappeared into the crowd. No, I cried. Go after her, Armani. I couldn't stop the tears. I can't. Kayla looked up with some big sleepy eyes of hers, and she smiled at me. But you have to go after her, Celia. Celia didn't understand. If I went after Tay-Tay, I'd have to leave them. I rubbed my hand across Kayla's forehead, and she closed her eyes and went back to sleep. Please watch over Tay-Tay, and I prayed for my cousin and let her find Daddy and Georgie. And I sat back down and let my head flop back so I could stare straight into the bluest sky I'd ever seen, and I realized just then that the only thing the storm hadn't ruined was the sky. That buttermilk frosting blue sky, and a cry got strangled in my throat. How could the sky be so beautiful, shining in all its blueness down on so much ugly, and it wasn't making a bit of sense to me. Something large and dark stepped smack dab in the front of me, instantly blocking out the whole promising clean light. Hey, are you T-Bone Curtis's niece? Hearing my uncle's name got me to standing. The voice belonged to a soldier girl, and I recognized the pretty brown face, but I couldn't remember why or how I knew her, or why or how she knew me. And she patted her open hand against her own chest and said, Specialist Salazar, in a voice that reminded me of J-Lo. She'd seen my eyes fixed on a long gun she had cradled like a baby with her right arm, and real quick she stopped standing as stiff as starch and lowered the gun so it was pointing down at the ground. She tilted her head, her eyebrows all but getting lost up under that army hat. Stella Salazar, I was with your uncle in Afghanistan. Her eyes shifted from me to wide-eyed Celie, and then to Kayla laid out in the mud grass, then to my feet. She frowned. I wanted to explain that they weren't my boots, but her eyebrows sank over her heavy-hearted eyes, and just then the boots didn't matter much. I was at your house a few months ago for the crawfish boil when our first unit got back from overseas. While she talked, I remembered that day. I seen it like the whole lower Ninth Ward turned out for that welcome home crawfish boil. Me, Mom, Miss Tilly had sung praises right over the top of Mr. Jasper Sr.'s jazzy saxophone playing in the middle of our road. That had been a great day, and the soldiers came home. The day Uncle T-Bone came back in one piece. Hey, Stella Salazar's voice snapped back from remembering. Your name's Armani, right? She smiled when she said my name. I liked the way she said it. It made me sound pretty, and I nodded, and I wished the smile could come back. I remember your name, she said. That's because the name of my favorite perfume. I liked her. Celie threw herself into the girl and wrapped her arms around her. I remember you, Celie squealed. You're Stella. They hugged good and tight for long. Stranger thought they were family, and even though after the hug ended, my sister kept right on hanging on poor Stella, and my arms were too heavy for hugging. My arms from somewhere in the belly of the crowd, and ear-splitting screams tore through the thick air. Quick pop, 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 firecracker-like sounds made my insides twitch. Stella's smile fell right off her face. Where are your parents? Celie's eyes filled with tears, and I swallowed hard, tried to open my mouth to speak, but my lips couldn't separate, and I wondered if Stella could feel Celie wiping her nose on her army shirt. Stella reached down and unbuttoned a long pocket on her pants, and she pulled out a bottle of Coke and handed it to me. I forgot all about the times Mama had drilled into my head about not sharing on account of not knowing who exactly where the other person's mouth has been. After me and Celie took sips, I offered the bottle back to Stella, and she waved her hand in a way that told me she didn't want it back, most likely because her mama taught her the same rule about germs. Stella was fidgety. Tell me where your mom... Somehow I got folded up in Stella's strong arms, and I cried, harder than I thought was possible, and blubbered on about how my missing family. Stella kept saying, shh, it's okay, I know. And then some words in Spanish I didn't understand. She sniffled a couple times before she bent down on one knee in front of me. She tipped my chin up with her finger. My eyelids were heavy and tired. How long has your mama been gone, Armani? She said the soft words quiet, like we were sharing a secret. I shrugged and looked back up at the sky, and I grabbed the sleeve of my shirt so I could clean the tears off my face. She's been gone a long time, Celie said, staring down at the ground. Kayla started to stir, and Celie went over to her, and I was grateful because I couldn't move, and I felt like it was up to my knees in cement, and it wasn't because of Meemaw's boots. It was there because of all them cinder blocks pulling up on each other in my chest that somehow settled on my feet, making it so I couldn't move from the spot I was in, and I didn't know if I was ever going to be able to move anywhere, ever. Kayla woke up and went straight to fussing about her tummy aching, and Stella picked her up and rubbed on her back. Muffled voices, talking mostly in numbers, came pointing at a walkie-talkie she had strapped to her shoulder. Deep creases spread across her forehead, and she turned back to me and talked all gibberish into the walkie-talkie. She whipped around and looked at me and Celie again and took a deep breath. Come on, Stella said, with a nod of her head. What? Come where? I asked, and I stood there like a dummy watching her shift Kayla in her arms. Celia looked at me with her saucer eyes and could tell her bottom lip was fixed in the pout. You can't stay here, Armani. It's not safe. There are buses. She looked around, lowering her voice to a firm whisper. They brought in buses to get people out of here, especially kids and women. This was the best news I heard in days. I think I might have even smiled. I could tell Celia was feeling the same as me, because when I caught a glimpse of her out of the corner of my eye, she was smiling real big and bouncing on her tippy toes, all excited. She had them weird, unblinking saucer eyes, though. We going? Kayla asked. Yep. And I smiled all sweet at my baby sister, and then smiled just as sweet at our new friend Stella. That's right, Kayla girl. We're going all right. It was just a nodding my head up and down all the way Georgie was famous for doing. We're going to go find Mama and then get a nice bus and get right on out of here, and I was rambling a smiling fool. That ain't right, Miss Stella. Ain't that right, Miss Stella? I nodded at Stella, confirming our plan. I didn't like the way she tipped her head up to one side and her eyebrows went and got all lost in her pulled back hair. What? I said. I was ready to go. Armani, we can't find your mama. There's no time. Besides, it's impossible. There are too many people here, and it's going to be dark soon. That last bus is leaving in 15 minutes. We have to go now. What are you saying? She's saying we have to go with Ma Seely had crying hiccups. Well, we can't, I said. Stella let Kayla slide down her leg till the girl was standing on her own feet, and then she pulled her arm around my shoulder and led me away from my sisters. Celia, I just need to talk about Armani for 1 sec, okay? And Celia sniffed and nodded. Stella walking after we'd gone a few ways from my sisters, and she rested one hand on each of our shoulders. How old are you, Armani? I blinked a tired blink. What day is it? It's Tuesday, August 30th. Tuesday? A whooshing sound filled my head like the wind moving our world upside down when we were stuck in the attic and my birthday cake went floating. Armani. I looked at her. The sounds of the chaos around us came rushing back to my ears. I'm 10. Oh man, 10? Stella looked up at the sky and closed her eyes. Well, 10 ain't 10 in 2 days. That sounded pitiful even to my own self. She took a deep breath and looked at me with a familiar softness around her eyes that made me wonder if Stella had a kid of her own. Okay, look, I'm telling you this because you need to understand. Another deep breath. Bad things are happening here, and you and your sisters can't stay here. Not tonight. Do you understand? But what about Mama? We just can't leave here. And the stupid shaking that starts in my toes was already making its way up the back of my wobbly legs. She put her hand up under my chin and squeezed enough to where it felt like a chin hug. You know what I think? She asked with a little smile. I shook my head. I think I know why your mama left you with the younger kids while she went to get your baby brother the help he needs. She did it because she trusts you and she knew that you could handle it. The wobble in my legs was going away. I bet you're real responsible, right? And I shrugged and nodded. Yeah, sort of. I stood a little taller. Your mama and daddy would want you to leave here on the bus. Stella paused and stopping and smiling. I'm serious when I tell you that you can't stay here tonight. The smile was completely gone. She had that hard soldier-like look in her eyes again. And I cleared my throat and looked past her shoulder, who at Seely, who was watching me real close. Well, where's the bus going? How will Mom and Daddy find us? I don't want you to worry about that right now. You just need to get to a safe place away from here, and I'll do my best to find your parents and tell them where you are. Loud, mumbled voices came pouring out of the walkie-talkie again. We have to go, Armani. They're about to start loading the bus. Well, maybe we can just wait for a minute here, Mama. And I pointed at the huge Superdome lurking up behind my sister and a million other people. You can't go in there, Stella. All but bit my head off. First of all, it's about 106 degrees inside the dome, and besides that, there's no place for little kids. I forced my shoulders back, trying to stand a little taller. I'm not a little kid. Look, I don't have time to argue with you, Armani. I'm trying to help you because T-Bone's like a brother to me. Stella took a deep breath and turned her head before looking back with the big round eyes. You have to trust me. Do it for them. I looked over at my sisters, and Celia was just staring. She was so small standing there like that. Hey, Stella said, you okay? No, I'm sure not okay. Can you see that my family's disappearing right before my eyes? I'm not okay. No one's ever going to be okay ever again, I screamed in my head. I guess, I said in a shaky voice, too soft to be coming from me. Where's Mom? Where was Mama? This is chapter 31. Specialist Salazar held Kayla with one arm and her rifle in the other, and Celia had a hold of a loop attached to Stella's army pants and was all but running alongside of her to keep up, and people started pushing and shoving, got out of the way when seeing the soldier with the kid stuck like Velcro. I walked fast and stiff as a board, thinking my chest would burst from the scream I was holding in, and I forgot again, and I tried to grab a hold of the locket that wasn't there. And there it was, the bus. I don't know exactly what I was expecting, but for sure it wasn't no school bus. There must have been 100,000 people all up against and around that bus, and my heart stopped when the door snapped shut and it started rolling inch by inch away from the crowd. I've seen ladies smacking the sides of the bus and even throwing perfectly good full water bottles at it. It seemed like everyone was yelling and cussing and acting a fool. My insides twisted into a knot, and I sucked a gulp of bus fumes when I seen that there was another bus hiding behind that one just left. The doors to the bus flew open, and a soldier stepped out to the steps with his legs spread and his rifle up in plain sight for everyone to see. People shoved and pushed and hollered, and two more army guys came. Stay with me, Stella shouted, and I grabbed a hold of one of the loops on Stella's pant leg and put my head down, letting her lead all the way, and I could see feet, lots of feet. We were at the door to the bus, and Stella was talking fast to one of the soldiers, and he came down off the steps of the bus, and he nodded at her, and she turned to me. She didn't even waste time trying to put on a smile. Okay, this is it. My eyes were jumpy, looking every which way, hoping that Mama was up in the crowd somewhere, and Celia was looking at me all puppy-eyed and sniffling. She wiped her snotty nose across her shoulder. Kayla wouldn't let go of Stella, and I tried her best to peel the girl's fat fingers away from her neck, but my legs went to wobbling, and Kayla wasn't budging. I felt like throwing up. What am I supposed to do? Get on the bus, Nene. It's going to be all right. Get on the bus. Meanwhil's voice was as loud as clear as ever, and I could hear the hum and smile behind her words, and my head cleared, and I knew that Mama was standing beside me, and I could feel her, and a calm fell over me. What are we going to do, Armani? Celia tugged on my arm. We're getting on the bus, I said, and as sure as I'd been about anything since leaving my other life behind, and just like that, Kayla slid into my arms like it was exactly where she wanted to be. A loud crackle of noise poured out of Stella's walkie-talkie, and I need to go, she said. She bent down and hugged Celia. Hold on, guys, my light's turned off. She bent down and hugged Celia and straightened Kayla's lime green headband and cupped her hand around one of her cheeks and kissed her there. Kayla never lifted her head off my shoulder or said a word, and Stella had her arm out to me, and I fell into her with my whole body. I buried my face in the rough camouflage shirt, and she kissed my forehead. Please find Mama and tell her where we're going. And Daddy, too, Celia added. I'll do my best, Stella said, and she started walking away, and me and Celia stood there watching her go. She stopped and half turned. She tapped her closed-up fist against her chest 2 times, pointed straight at me, and hollered, Stay strong. My breath got caught, and I nodded before I turned to go. I will, she whispered. Specialist Stella Salazar marched off into the sea of crazies, and with Kayla in her usual spot up on my hip and Celia hanging on the back of me, we slowly made our way up the bus steps, and my nerves were wearing down fast. People were shoving and hollering, but not one bit happy that we'd skipped to the front of the line. Sweat was pouring in my eyes, and my arms were trembling with the weight of my baby sister, and I kept telling myself, stay strong. When we finally made it to the top step, I all but stopped breathing when my eyes adjusted to the dark of the bus and seeing all the people. There's a certain way a school bus looks, all jam-packed with kids going to school, but it takes on a whole different level when you stuff grown-up, wore-down people in there like that. I barely took 2 steps into the aisle when the stupid bus driver stuck her arm out in front of Celia and said, Nope, that's it. I can't take no more. Armani, Celia hollered. I tried to lift the lady's arm. Well, she's with me. She's my sister. I don't care who she is. I'll take 75, not 74, not 76, 75, period. And the lady had one blue eye that was looking at me and the other, and one that was floating off on its own. I didn't like looking at her. But she's my sister. I thought maybe the driver just didn't understand. And she was whimpering and trying to wiggle her way over to me when that trifling lady stuck her leg out and blocked the whole dang aisle so Celia couldn't get to me. Armani, she yelled again. Kayla felt like 10 sacks of sweet potatoes weighing on my arm, and it didn't help when she was crying about her belly aching, and I was drenched in sweat. And somehow I kept from plowing my fist into the ugly woman's fat head and knocking her good eye loose. But, ma'am, I said as sugary sweet as possible and pointed to Kayla hanging off the right side of my body. This one here is going to sit on my lap. You can't really count her. I don't care if she sits on your nappy head, she counts. The lady wasn't no lady at all. She was low down, simple mess. Other people on the bus went to fussing and hollering. Either you 2 go down and sit, that one there catches the next bus, or all 3 of you can just get off, she said. It don't make no difference to me. I opened my mouth to say something I most likely would have regretted, but someone came walking up the aisle and back of the dark, sour-smelling bus. There was something familiar about the shape of the person who was all but taking up the whole narrow aisle, but I couldn't figure out why. And the driver looked up in the mirror and told the person in the aisle to go sit back down. No, they could have my seat. Denisha? That's the end of 31.